Okay, so one of the most spicy topics as of late is about Sunbreak's event quests. And it's no hidden secret that some people think that the event quests that we've been getting have been getting worse. And this opinion has gotten so loud that it seems like even the devs have been making a more active effort to show off all the good event quest rewards in the dev diaries that we've got. But do the devs really need to do this? And are the event quests really getting worse? Personally, I love event quests. I think they're one of the unspoken backbones that makes Monster Hunter so successful. Event quests have a huge breadth of variety, and honestly, it's their ability to vary so much that is their greatest feature. Ranging from naked fights against Diablos, to catching fish to better aid in your hunting preparations, all the way to fighting Uragans that are smaller than Kelby, and Devil Joe so large that they could eat the world. I'm not going to pretend that event quests are grander than they are. Each event quest is just a quest with either an interesting reward, a difficult challenge, or a fun gimmick. But as a whole, event quests are really fun tools to give the players new things to do. And it's also an interesting tool that the developers can use to fine tweak the game and to help balance it as it gets further on in its life cycle. For example, letting new players catch up to where the current majority of players are via quests that dish out loads of HR points, or to help alleviate the grind for certain items, or even to help people find the rarer sites in Monster Hunter, like huge/tiny monsters, helping to push them closer to arguably the most difficult achievement in the game, or even to find rare critters that can be difficult to find without the event quests guaranteeing their spawns. So with all that said, it's understandable for people to question what's going on when the event quests in Rise seemingly stop doing these things. And that's why this video is here. We're gonna get to the bottom of what's going on and answer the question, are event quests actually getting worse? Alright, the statement, are event quests getting worse, is actually a bit tricky to unpack because getting worse isn't really something quantifiable. We want to have some numbers so that we can say numbers go down and then that makes events bad, actually. So we're going to have to split this part up and look at the quantifiable stuff, and then we'll take that data and use it to try and explore the less quantifiable stuff. So let's jump right in. I think the best way to see why it feels like the event quests have gotten worse is to compare Rise and Sunbreak's event quest lineup to the event quests from previous games. Obviously, this means that we're already starting out on an uneven playing field, as Sunbreak hasn't released all of its event quests yet. So, Sunbreak could end up faring better than this video suggests. However, it might also end up faring a lot worse. Choosing the right game to compare Rise and Sunbreak to is also a bit tricky, as the recent games have had all of their own quirks that could be seen to throw off the comparison somewhat. World and Iceborne sort of had a different event quest system as a whole, as they would rotate their event quests weekly, and instead of getting a totally new event quest every week, we'd get a new batch of event quests from the pool, and occasionally we'd be introduced to a totally new event quest. The next closest game, Generations Ultimate, was a mashup of some of the older games, and it was designed as a send-off to the classical era of Monster Hunter that had just ended. And as such, it could be seen as an unfair comparison, as because it was a big old mashup, it had a lot of stuff to work with, and so the event quest rewards could have been easier to come by. Moving even further back then, we have Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and that seems like a decent choice for comparison, but at this point the issue is the gap of time between releases. The landscape of video games in general has changed a lot since 2015, and it might lead to some wonky conclusions when comparing it to modern day titles. Given all this, I think the only acceptable method to look at Sunbreak's event quests is to contrast it to all the other games and see what kind of trends and what kind of differences they have between them. So let's start with the older games and work forward. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate had 78 event quests, alongside a unique set of episodic quests that totaled 6 quest lines with 3 quests for each, making a total of 18 extra quests. The episodic quests are almost a prototype of the special assignments tab in Monster Hunter World. They're event quests, but they were more than that, as they had a little storyline to tie them all together. On a side note, I'd completely forgotten about them before doing research for this video, so having a dive and seeing that they were a thing again was a really nice trip down memory lane. But for the purpose of this video, we'll just assume that the episodic quests don't exist. Of the event quests then, I've sorted those into different categories. That way we see how often an event quest gives us certain rewards, or what percentage of quests don't have a reward but do give us a beneficial service, and so on. You can think of beneficial services as making rare endemic life guaranteed to spawn, as an example from Monster Hunter World, or having a really high chance to cause crown-sized monsters to appear, and as a result of that, all the tiny Aragon type quests get added into the beneficial service quests category as well. One of the ways that I've streamlined writing this list down is that I will only count a quest once. So if a quest gives you a guaranteed crown-size monster while also giving you materials for a special armor set, then I will count it as an armor quest, a quest that rewards armor, and not as a beneficial service quest. I've sort of glossed over some of the categories that they can be sorted into, so to put it clearly for everyone, the categories are quests that give new armor, or things that are wearable, quests that give you or your palicos weapons, quests that have beneficial services, and then quests that give you an increased rate of MR or HR points. Technically, this is sort of a beneficial service type of quest, but I felt like I should separate the category for reasons later on in the video. And finally, quests that give you nothing at all. So moving back to looking at 4 Ultimates quests, we have a total of 78 event quests, and 27 of them, or 34% of quests, will give us some form of armor. If this was the later games, it would also include layered armor, but it does include armor for your cat, as you could have cat armor in that game. 15 of the remaining 51 quests will give you a new weapon. Remember that I'm talking about quests and not weapons. There are a lot of quests that would give you multiple weapons in this game, so it's not 15 extra weapons, but it's 15 quests that give you at least one new weapon. The beneficial service categories for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate can go 2 different ways, and that depends on whether or not you count guaranteed drops of tickets used to craft weapons as real beneficial service quests, when you can get those tickets in-game normally, but at a very rare rate, rather than having it be guaranteed. If you do count it, then the number of beneficial service quests is 36 out of the remaining 36, but if you don't, then only 10 of the remaining quests will be counting as service quests, so you'd have 26 quests that would give you effectively nothing. And remember, we're talking about quests in terms of rewards, so many of those nothing quests were actually pretty good, and they were just designed as a challenge rather than something to get rewards from. Either way, depending on how you swing it, either 100% of the event quests had some form of valuable reward to be obtained from them, or if you swing it the other way, you'd get 58 of the 78, 52 of the 78, giving you rewards of some variety, which would give us an average of 66%. So only one, and this is quotation fingers, only one dud quest in every 3 quests. And that's a pretty good baseline to start from. Moving forward in time, we approach Generations Ultimate. This game had a huge number of regular quests in it, so having a huge number of event quests would certainly suit the game, and indeed, the number of event quests has greatly increased, and it's done it by a whopping 49 quests, we go from 78 to 127 event quests in Generation Ultimate, 42 of which will give you tangible rewards that you can wear. Interestingly, this is over 30%, or 33% rather, of all event quests in Generations Ultimate. So exactly 1 in 3 quests will get you some form of wearable armor. However, because of Generation Ultimate's Prowler mode, a lot of this is cat armor, so the number may be artificially high, especially if you didn't like using Prowler mode. And preferences affecting the end result will be a very important thing to think about later on, so keep that in mind. Generations Ultimate also had 22 quests that gave you new weapons, and then 16 quests that acted as beneficial service quests, the king of which being the Charm Farmer's Heaven, Urgent Coal Miners Needed. I'll say no more. So that leaves us with 47 does nothing quests that don't give you tangible rewards. So overall, we have a dud quest ratio of 47 out of 127, or 37%. So just a little bit over 1 in 3 quests not giving you anything interesting in the rewards. And I'll say it once again, right now we are only looking at rewards, so calling these quests dud quests is a little bit disingenuous, as we're not considering the quests that don't have end rewards but are still interesting, such as the super difficult version of Nawa. Both 4 Ultimate and Generations Ultimate were released back when Capcom was selling G-Rank as an entirely separate game rather than a DLC like we've gotten with World and Rise. So we will separate World and Iceborne, look at them, and then combine them together, and we'll do the same for Rise and Sunbreak as well. Speaking of World then, just the base game had 56 event quests, 23 of which gave us armor of some kind, and then 7 of the remainder gave us weapons. Then we had 9 quests, which were beneficial or service quests, like guaranteed rare endemic life spawns or the crown quests. And then after that, we had 4 quests that were essentially normal quests but gave increased HR. And then finally, the remaining 9 quests had no form of extra reward. This makes 83% of the event quests give us some form of reward, which is really good, and it's higher than the games before it. But does it stay the same once we add the Iceborne content into the mix? Iceborne gave us an extra 78 quests, 26 of which gave us some form of armor or wearable reward. Then we got 9 extra quests that rewarded new weapons, 20 quests that had a beneficial use or acted as a service, like crown size monster hunting, or helping to farm difficult to gather items like wetfish scale pluses. And then the last 23 quests all had bonus rates of MR or /HR. So this is the first time that we've gotten an 100% hit rate in terms of rewards. And once combined with Worlds, the percentage of rewarding event quests is still up at the 93% rate, which is great. However, there is a bit to unpack here in regards to quests that give bonus MR/HR points. I stand by MR points being a valuable reward for event quests, as it helps players that have joined later into the game's life cycle catch up to where the rest of the player base is, especially when the later DLCs tend to start locking monsters behind MR requirements, such as requiring 100 MR for getting health augment on Rarity 12 weapons in Iceborne, or the Risen Elder Dragons being locked behind MR 100 and up in Sunbreak. However, I can imagine that some people will take umbrage at the idea of calling these quests beneficial, which is why I've put them in a separate category. So if we shift that category over to the other side, so it's now part of the air quotes not good quests, then we now have 13 not good quests in Base World and 23 not good quests in Iceborne, for a total of 36 nothing quests out of 134. That's still only 19%, So just under 1 in 5 quests being a nothing quest, which is still much better than the previous games that had a 1 in 3 chance of there being a nothing quest if you were to randomly pull out one of the quests. So with all of that out of the way, we can finally look at Rise and Sunbreak's event quests. Obviously, Sunbreak hasn't finished releasing its event quests, which is why we're paying less attention to actual numbers of quests instead of ratios. However, for the record, the base game, Rise, had 57 event quests, including Rampage quests, which is 1 extra compared to Base World. Of those 57 quests that Rise gave us, 16 quests rewarded us with some form of cosmetic armor, and then we had no quests that gave us new weapons. 6 quests gave us titles, 9 quests gave us sticker sets, and 8 quests gave us new gestures or poses. We then had 1 quest that is a beneficial service quest, being able to fight Ibushi without having to do a rampage. And then we had 17 no reward quests. So to unpack stuff a bit, this is the first time that the no reward category has been the single largest category out of all of them in the set. It's also the first time that we've not had any weapons as rewards. However, it's also the first time that we've been able to get titles, stickers, and gestures as rewards. Grouping all of these together, along with the quests that reward armor, we have 40 out of our 457 quests that gives us rewards, leaving us with a 70% of quests being good quests and 30% being duds. So just a little shy of our 1 in 3 quests giving no rewards. The picture stays pretty similar when we factor in Sunbreak data. Mind you, we've only gotten 16 quests at the time of writing, 6 of which are armor related, 1 gives us a title, 3 that give us some gestures, 2 give us beneficial services, and 4 quests with no rewards. Add these into the mix, and we only sway the percentage by about 1%. So 71% of the quests give us rewards, and 29% give nothing. And that's not actually that bad compared to the older games. So why does it feel bad? Well, the first thing is, depending on how you swing it, the event quests are simply giving less rewards. World and Iceborne has a really good ratio of event quest rewards, with a 93%. Comparing that to Rise's 71%, and even if we're not counting bonus MR quests as beneficial for World, but we do for Sunbreak, we still have a 10% disparity, where World has 80% good quests, while Rise and Sunbreak only have 71. This is why I wanted to add the older games to the comparison. It's to further explore this specific difference, because if we look at all of them, then it's not Rise that's bad, it's that World was exceptionally good. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Which game is it best to compare Rise against? I'm trying to make this video impartial, so I'm trying to keep my own opinions in check here. World is definitely an outlier, and judging everything compared to the outlier isn't always the best thing to do. But on the other hand, these aren't random data points, they're games that have come out sequentially, and you'd expect the games to improve upon its previous iterations. So if World has raised the bar, then I don't think it's unreasonable if people expect the games to improve upon World's new standard, rather than an average across the last half decade. The other big problem is that not all rewards are treated equally. In terms of weapons and armor type rewards, Rise and Sunbreak are lacking. Sunbreak and Rise have given us 22 quests that unlock armor, and no quests that give us new weapons, while World alone has given us 28 quests with weapons and armor. 4U gave us 27 quests with armor alone, and GU gave us 22 quests with new weapons in, let alone its huge span of quests that would give you new armor pieces. The way Rise and Sunbreak attempt to make up for this lack is via gestures, stickers, and titles. And depending on how you value them as rewards, the ratio of quests that give you good rewards will drop dramatically. Personally, I quite like the gestures and the poses, especially as I use them to make YouTube thumbnails, so I appreciate them as rewards. Titles and stickers, on the other hand, less so. Given this, if we rejig the ratio, we'd get 45% of quests giving good rewards. So already we're finding that event quests are more likely to be a dud quest than it giving a valuable reward. And if you're in the group of people that find stickers, titles, and gestures/poses to be unfulfilling rewards, then that drops even further to 30%. So unlike the older games, where you'd expect one uninteresting reward every 3 event quests, you're actually getting the opposite in Rise, where you can expect one interesting reward from every 3 event quests. Given that, I can certainly understand if people feel like they aren't getting fun rewards out of event quests like they used to in older games. The rewards feeling weak in Rise and Sunbreak is definitely exacerbated by the lack of event weapons. In the previous games, event quests would give you access to some of the most interesting and the most entertaining weapons in the game, ranging from one of my all-time favorite lances, Shark Q Attack Q, to really cool weapons like the Royal Order series in Iceborne. We've even got fan-made weapons put into the actual games via competitions that Capcom would host, and that has led to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate's Steampunk Insect Glaive, or the Wyvern Ignition Greatsword in World. It's a really weird choice to not include weapons as rewards from event quests, and it only helps to make the event quests in Rise feel more bare bones and less interesting compared to previous games. Looking at the other side of the argument, the biggest counterpoint I've seen in this regard is that the reason why there are no event quests that give us weapons as rewards is because the weapons that would have been event quests have already been given to us in the form of the funny weapons at the bottom of the tree. But I'm not sure how much water this argument holds. Firstly, taking it at face value, this would mean that we get the equivalent of 3 to 4 event quests worth of weapons, which would be nice, but it's still significantly smaller than every other game, where we can expect 16 to 22 quests that would result in some kind of weapon. Secondly, I'm not sure that these weapons would be found as event quest weapons. In the past, using Pelagius Needle as an example, that's been a weapon that has existed within the series for a very long time, and I don't think it's ever been obtained via event quest, and instead it's been found from weird corners of the game, like growing the mushrooms in your farm, or getting your cats to go off and find them, which is also how we get these weapons within the game. Now, it is possible that I'm remembering wrong. They could be event quest weapons from really far back, but it still doesn't change the fact that these weapons have been obtainable outside of event quests in many of the more recent middling games. But regardless of whether or not they were intended to be a replacement for event quest weapons, there is still another and arguably bigger issue in regards to the lack of event quest weapons and why it makes the event quests feel subpar in Rise. And that's microtransactions. Microtransactions in Monster Hunter is a really touchy subject, and I don't want to do the topic a disservice by talking about it poorly here. So I'll try to use my words carefully and gently waft over the subject rather than getting right into the details. Rise is the first game in the series that introduced cosmetic armor that is exclusively obtainable via buying it. This isn't a video about microtransactions, and we don't have the time for me to explain why the commonly repeated "it's only cosmetic" doesn't really work in a game where fancy armor is supposed to be a cool way of showing off your achievements. But regardless, when you're introducing a lot of new cosmetic armor for people to buy, while lowering the amount that you're adding to the game via event quests, it can make the game feel a bit dirty. And this is doubly so when you're adding fancy new weapon skins into the game for people to buy, while not adding the weapons that we'd expect to get from event quests. And I want to remind you that event quests have given us new weapons in all the games in the past, so I think it's reasonable for people to expect that some of the money that they have spent while buying the expansion has gone towards fancy looking weapons that they could earn after a difficult quest, and not to weapons that you'd then have to pay for a second time. Out of all the reasons that we've discussed today, this is the one that I most sympathize with. And all I can do is hope that we actually see some event quests that give us new weapons, or at least new weapon skin. So to round this off, I want to remind everyone that it's not all doom and gloom. This video has painted a pretty damning picture of Rise's event quests, but it's done so by being very focused on event quests with rewards, or that have special properties like comically large monsters. And that's not all that there is to event quests. One of the other aspects is just to bring you some really difficult monsters to fight. And while, yeah, it would be cool if the really difficult monsters gave you a cool helmet to show off that you've beaten the difficult monster, it doesn't make the quest pointless if it lacks that helmet. The event quest can be interesting just because of its difficulty, and that's not really been factored into any of this video. And finally, it seems like the devs are already aware of how the community feels about event quests at the moment. The Title Update 3 developer diary included all the armor that they'd be adding to the game via event quests. So it seems like they want us to know that lots of good event quests will be coming. And hopefully we've gotten one of the good ones this week. I hope you found the video informative. It's been interesting making this, as I've had to pull over loads of data from the wiki and other sites to remember what the older event quests did. If you like this kind of content, then maybe consider subscribing. And if you liked the video, then it would be great if you could give the video a like. And if you didn't, I'd love to know why down in the comments. Speaking of comments, I'd love to hear what you have to think about event quests. So I'll see you down there and we can chat. But finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank you for watching. See you next time.